Hey, it's time to talk about everything I read in July through September. Okay, I read 11 books in quarter three, which is July to September of this year, which is pretty good numbers for me. I think that's average. I think I read around the same 10 or 11 or maybe 12 last quarter. So we're pretty even on how much we've been reading this year. The first book I read is The Sword Catcher by Cassandra Clare. This is Cassandra Clare's first adult fantasy. I've read a lot of her YA work, and I gave this 4 out of 5 stars. So I would say this is like a very typical fantasy book, but like in all of the best ways. We have two POVs that we switch from. Kel, who as a young boy gets chosen to be the body double and like a bodyguard of the prince of the kingdom. Then we have Lynn, who's a physician who's a part of the Ashkar, which is like a minority who are like very discriminated against and like have to live in a certain part of the city in this kingdom because they are able to perform magic while the rest of the world lost magic at one point. Even though their magic is just like a little bit, they've only are able to like really heal people. People are still super like hate them for it, basically. So the story kicks off with a failed assassination attempt against the prince that kind of brings all of our characters together, trying to figure out what is going on in the underbelly of this city, who is trying to kill the crown prince, and all of the politics, and where did magic go, and when is it coming back, and all of that good fantasy nonsense. And it really hit for me. This was also just a casually queer book. There's not really homophobia in it. People are free to be with men or women, which was a nice touch. And then this is definitely a fantasy, not a romantasy. There is romance aspects, but it definitely is on the back burner of the story. But the romance that was there, I did enjoy, especially because when it comes to one of the characters, I had no idea who he was gonna like actually pursue or end up with in the end. I feel like he had like 3 different love interests, but they were all just so casual that I didn't even know if he was going to get a romantic interest at any point. So yeah, I gave this 4 stars instead of 5 because, like I said, it felt like a very general fantasy novel, and when I finished it, I wasn't rushing to read the next book. I believe this is a trilogy and there's only 2 books out currently. I do intend to continue the series, but like I said, I'm not rushing towards it. So I don't think it was life-changing or like a standout in the genre. I think it was just a good fantasy read. Next, I read Light from Uncommon Stars by Rika Aoki. I ended up giving this 3 out of 5 stars. This is a sci-fi, supernatural, fantasy, magic realism, queer story. There's a lot going on here. Basically, we have kind of two or 3 main characters. It's really hard to tell because, like I said, there's a lot going on. It almost feels like 5 different stories in one, and they do end up connecting, but honestly not in a way that I felt very satisfied by. I still felt like the story was very jumbled. We start with a young violinist, Katrina, who is transgender and is running away from home with just like her clothes and her violin on her back. And then we have a master violinist teacher, Shizuka Satomi, who had made a deal with the devil to basically be like the best violinist, but she has to feed this demon like 7 souls. And then we have a family who's running a donut shop, but that it's actually a spaceship because they are running from a galactic war. So yeah, a lot going on. Even though there is like so much going on, this was a really funny, a really heartwarming, and at times really tough read. Our trans character, Katrina, does not have an easy life as a transgender woman. She is extremely traumatized, and the world just does not treat her kindly, and even when it does treat her kindly, she is suspicious of it, thinking it's going to come with a price. And it's just like really sad, and I just wanted good things for her and for her to love herself. Yeah, so with her, like, her story was just hard to read at times, but she does go on a journey of self-discovery and self-love and acceptance and found family and all that. I just wish it was all tied together more. Okay, next I read Blood and Money by Thomas Thompson, which is such a name. This was a gift that I got years ago because I had a really big true crime phase. And this true crime novel takes place in Houston, where I grew up. So that's why it was given to me. This book, like as you could see, is old. The crime that took place happened in the 60s, I believe, and the book was published not long that after, like in the 70s. It's also just really wild because I went into it completely blind. I didn't even remember the synopsis on the back. I just started reading, and it took like, I think 100 pages for like the crime to actually happen, because this author really sets you up to know every single player on the field from like when they were a child to present day, and also like wants to give you a view of what Houston was like during that time, because this definitely is a story about privilege and money and suspicions and whatnot. So it is very detailed and very thorough, but it also wasn't a hard read. It did take me a while to like get into, but once I got into the story, I was like really compelled to find out what the heck was going on. So yeah, if you like true crime and you're like interested in the Houston area and history or whatever, I definitely recommend it. But also don't expect a like satisfying ending, because there isn't one. This was one where I actually ended up having to Google what happened to certain people in the story, because the book was written and published before like certain people were charged with anything, is what I'll say, which is just wild for how long that book is. I was like, we're nearing the end and a certain someone is still not charged with any crimes. So that was wild. Editor Kindle here to mention that I did give this 3 out of 5 stars, and also wanted to mention it is definitely a product of its time. So written in the 70s, there is some homophobia, racism, and like really poor opinions about women and sex work. So if you do decide to read this, just keep that in mind. Okay, next I read maybe the worst book I have read this year, One Italian Summer by Rebecca Searle. I gave this 2 stars, but I think I want to drop it down to a 1 star. The more I think about it, the more I dislike this book. So this is a romance novel. I literally, in my notes, have genre trash. That's how much I dislike this book. Okay, so this is about the main character, Katie, who is probably the most boring main character I have read in so long. Like, okay, let's finish the recap. So basically, Katie is in her 30s. She's married. She's extremely close with her mom. But suddenly her mom falls ill and she ends up dying. And this like rocks Katie's entire world, because she is like weirdly codependent on her mother. Katie's mom, Carol, and her were supposed to go on an Italian vacation to visit somewhere that Carol had visited in her youth and really loved. So Katie decides to take the trip anyways and go by herself to like find closure and feel closer with her mother. I guess this also counts as magic realism, because when Katie gets there, she actually ends up finding her mom from 30 years ago when she spent time in this Italian town, and like spends time with her 30-year-old mom. And it is so unsatisfying. I say Katie was codependent on her mom. Like, I mean, she actually like couldn't even make a decision without running by her mother first. Like, her and her husband wouldn't bother to have like family traditions or like even make a dinner, because why should they bother when they can just go over to Carol's house? And it was just like, this is not like a healthy mother-daughter relationship in the slightest. And like when you meet Carol at a young age, Katie says that she's like independent and creative and fun, and I'm like, so like why did your like really cool mom let you like have this like really fucked up relationship with her? Like, how did she not strive to give her that independence? It's also, she has a weird relationship with her dad, because she always talks about how like she was the number one in her mom's life. Like, their relationship was the forefront of their lives, and like her and her dad's relationship, and like Carol and her husband's relationship, and Katie and her husband's relationships, these were all second to Katie and her mom. They were each other's love of their lives. And I was like, I just don't think that's true. And like, why did she let you believe that? And also, you're like in your 30s. Like, how have you not worked through some of your like parental bullshit yet? And just as someone who is also just very close to their mother, I thought this would be like heartbreaking and heartwarming. And I thought I would relate a lot. And I just didn't at all. If I acted this way, my mother would be like, what's wrong with you? Like, anyways, it was just like so frustrating to read. And then there's a whole like, does she actually love her husband, or did she just get married because it was convenient thing? And that is like annoying to read about, that I don't even want to mention. This book was just bad. I just really hated it. And I can't even believe I read it all because Katie was just insufferable. And I'm like, did she even learn anything at the end of this book? Because she pretty much ends up right where she began, which I guess is spoilers. But at this point, if you still read this book, I mean, God bless. Anyways, okay, after that disaster of a book, I read The Third Gilmore Girl by Kelly Bishop. This is her memoir, and I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. It was so good. I usually don't love rating memoirs or like nonfiction because it feels like you're rating someone's life, and that's like kind of icky to me. But I just love Kelly Bishop. I love Gilmore Girls growing up. I love musicals, and she spent most of her life in the theater dancing. And she was also an original member of a chorus line. So this was just like fascinating to read. She is just such an interesting person, and I just loved getting a glimpse into her like long life, especially because she never had kids, and I do not want to have kids. So like reading about someone's like successful and life like full of love without having children is just, nice to read. Okay, next I read Every Secret Thing by Laura Lippman, and I gave this like 2.5, 3 stars. This is a thriller. It's also actually a movie with Dakota Fanning that I haven't watched yet, but I kind of want to. And my like biggest gripe with this is that this book is like weirdly fat phobic. There's a character who has gained weight throughout her life, and it's mentioned every time she's on the page. Every time she interacts with someone, her weight is like mentioned or talked about or whatever. And I was like, I get it. She gained weight. She's big. We can move on. And then there ends up being like a plot reasoning for her being big, where I was like, what are we talking about? What do you mean? Anyways, okay. So this story is about 2 young girls who, when they're like 8 or 9, basically kidnap a baby off of a porch of a house who was like left alone for like a minute. And the baby ends up dying. You don't really know what fully happened to the baby, but you know that both of the girls went to juvie until they are 18. Then the book picks up from when they are released at 18 years old, because once they are both released and they're both home, another child has gone missing. So they are immediately like suspect. So you get the POVs of both of these girls. I don't even remember their names. Honestly, it doesn't really matter. But you also get the POV of a cop. You get the POV of a reporter. You get the POV of a mom. You get the POV of the mom of the dead baby. Like, there's so many POVs in here that were just unnecessary. There's just like so much weird, unnecessary background story that I didn't care about, that honestly didn't make sense. I was like, so what are we doing here? There's like a big twist at the end where I was just like, okay. And it really just fell flat for me. I thought the plot would be way more compelling than it was, but it just kind of felt like a generic thriller with the standard twists and turns and a lot of just unnecessary backstory on characters I did not care about at all. So yeah, this might be one where you skip the book and watch the movie, because surely it condensed all of that unnecessary backstory. Okay, next I read Tusk Love by Thea Guanzon, and this is the romantasy that takes place in the Critical Role universe. If you don't know what Critical Role is, it's a TTRPG D&D show. It's like the most popular Dungeons and Dragons show on the internet right now. And they have their own Amazon Prime animated shows as well, called The Legends of Vox Machina, and this is a romantasy book that takes place in their world. I've been a fan of Critical Role for many years now, so I knew I was going to read this immediately when I found out they were releasing it, and it didn't disappoint. I did give it 3.5 stars, mostly because it was just very standard romantasy. Nothing really came out as a surprise. There wasn't really anything stand out about it. It was just like a standard good time. There is smut in it, and I didn't mind it. I thought it was good. I don't read a ton of smut. I didn't mind this in this book at all, and I thought it was done nicely. What is this about? Okay, so this is about a young girl, Guinevere, who she is traveling to a different city to meet up with her merchant parents. But whenever she's traveling, she gets attacked by bandits and her guards get killed. Her merchandise gets stolen except for like one box that she hid, and she almost gets killed until this half-orc Oscar rescues her and takes her under his wing. He basically decides to accompany her to the town that she was meeting up with her parents at, and while that happens, they end up falling in love. But then things get complicated because she's actually not just meeting her parents, she's also meeting her fiance, who she has never met, but she is betrothed to. So a lot of, standard romantasy, magic, angst, defying parents, finding their own true identity. Yeah, it was a fun time. I think if you like romantasy, you should pick this up. If you're a fan of Critical Role, this is also fun to just be in Exandria and their world again. I think if they put out more books, I definitely want to check them out. But yeah, let me know if you've read this, if you're a fan of Critical Role, and if I should read any of the other novels they put out. Next, I finally finished listening to the audiobook of The Mask of Fear by Alexander Freed. This is the first book in this new Star Wars trilogy series. I don't know, the Reign of the Empire, which is basically about the very first years of the Empire being established. So this book followed Mon Mothma, Saw Gerrera, and Bail Organa dealing with the Empire being in power. This audiobook was so long, it took me months to finish, but I am glad I did. I gave this 4 stars. The story was really good. I loved Mon Mothma's plot lines, and Bail Organa and Saw Gerrera were frustrating at times, but it's still fun to see what those characters are up to. And there are some other newly introduced characters that we follow as well, who were pretty interesting, but not super standout to me. The audiobook was definitely the way to go because it adds the music and the sound effects, and I just loved being in that Star Wars audio world. I don't know if I will continue the Reign of Empire series. I think I might just see when the second book comes out what the reception is. I did really like this story though, but I just don't necessarily have the need for more, if that makes sense. But if you're a fan of Mon Mothma, literally at all, you need to read this book because she does some crazy things, stuff where I was did that actually just happen? What do you mean? I also just really liked getting more background of her and what happened to her and other senators when the Empire got established. She got locked in basically a closet for days while the Empire was killing people and setting itself up. And you kind of get a glimpse into her trauma and why she continues to do what she does. So yeah, I really enjoyed it. And like I said, I definitely recommend the audiobook route. The Star Wars books in audio are just so good. Okay, next I read Arch Conspirator by Veronica Roth. I actually picked this up in a thrift store and was shocked to see a Veronica Roth book there. She is the one who wrote the Divergent series, the really popular YA dystopian franchise. This is a novella. It's super short. It is a kind of, dystopian tale, but it's a retelling of the play Antigone. I don't think you need to know anything about the play of Antigone going in. I sure as hell didn't. Once I finished the novella, I did look up what the play was about, and it very much keeps a lot of the similar themes, except it takes place in a post-apocalyptic world instead of in Athens or whatever. So this is about Antigone, who lives in the last city remaining on Earth called the Archive. Her uncle is the reigning king of the city because he ended up killing her dad and basically keeping her and her siblings prisoner. The Archive is kind of interesting. It's described as the last city on Earth. There's forests surrounding it, but if you go out into the forest at all, you die from radiation poisoning. And then it's also called the Archive because they basically keep everyone's DNA and believe in reincarnation, and also families can only have children from a specific reincarnation process, not like a natural birth. So like in the play, Antigone and her siblings are like seen as others because they were the product of incest, but here they're seen as like weird and others. Actually, they're seen as having not a soul because they didn't come from the archive. They were naturally birthed between her parents. So this city believes that there's like a set amount of souls basically, and that they all are stored in this archive, and you can only get impregnated from DNA from the archive. And if you have a natural birth, your baby is born without a soul. Anyways, so basically there is a rebellion going on, and two of her brothers end up dying in the like rebellion process because one of them was on her uncle's side, the other was on the rebellion side. And her uncle decides to make an example of her brother and like doesn't let him have the right to have his DNA be put into the archive, which is seen as like very blasphemous. It's like denying his right to a burial and whatnot. And this is what like jumpstarts the story and like the moral questions and like, is it okay to deny someone their like death rights and whatnot? Which apparently is also what the play is very much about. So I really enjoyed this. I gave this 4 out of 5 stars, and I thought it was very interesting. There is like some stuff, there's like hints here about like woman autonomy and like pregnancy and stuff. We don't really like delve too much into it because this is a novella, but I think the ideas were present enough to be thought-provoking, even if it wasn't very in-depth. At the end of the novella, Veronica Roth also talks about how much she loved reading the play of Antigone, and was excited to do a retelling of it. And I feel like the love for that story really shined through, and definitely made me interested in the play, which I actually got a TikTok the other day that apparently 2 actors who played the doctor, the like 11th doctor and then the female doctor, apparently did this play, and it's like available on YouTube somewhere, and I definitely want to like check it out. So yeah, if you like Greek retellings and dystopian books, this is so short, and I think it did a good job of blending the like story of Antigone with a dystopian like future world. Yeah, and it was really interesting. I really liked it. Speaking of shorter books, I then read I Who Have Never Known Men by Jacqueline Hartman. Holy crap. This might be the best book I've read this year. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. Dude, this book, I like almost don't even want to talk about it because I want people to read it without knowing anything. Like, if you are at all interested in like sci-fi or like what it means to be a human, like skip forward 5 minutes and then just go pick up this book and read it. So, okay. So I Who Have Never Known Men is about our main character, the child, who she is in a underground prison bunker with 39 other women. She is the youngest and the only child present. She has no memories of her life before living in this bunker. This bunker has like the very bare necessities of what these women need to live. They have mattresses, they are provided food, there is a toilet, and they are provided water, but there are male guards that are constantly patrolling and like whip them if they like touch each other, if they do anything out of line, if they like are whispering and trying to conspire against the guards, they will be punished. The guards also do not speak at all, no matter how much they provoke them. The guards just whip the women and move on with their life. So basically the women and the child have lived in this bunker for years, and they can tell because of how much the child has grown. She reaches a point where she should have gone through puberty, but because of the conditions she lived in, ends up not fully going through puberty, until an enticing incident happens that changes everyone's lives, basically. This book was so well done. You're in the child's head the entire time. She's never named. She never remembers what happened to her or who she was before she was in this bunker. And because of this, the way she thinks and acts and logics and what she cares about is completely different than the other women who remember a world before this. And towards the end of this book, this really reminded me of the Psalm of the Wild Built, because I felt like it really was a meditation on what does it mean to be human, and like what it means to be a human when like no one is watching and you're just living a life alone, and that there's still like meaning and purpose there. It was just, I don't know, it was so good. It was sad. It was weirdly sci-fi, which I'm not even going to mention the sci-fi parts, but I was like, what do you mean? Whenever it popped up, I just loved this book. I think it was an instant classic for me, and I was shocked that I hadn't heard of it until now, because it came out in like the 60s or 70s, but it just blew up on Book Talk, and I'm like glad it did, because it was so freaking good. It's also translated from French, I want to say. Yeah, it's translated from French. So if you are wanting to read more translated work, also definitely pick up I Who Have Never Known Men. Also, it's not that long. It's fairly short, and it's a very quick read. Yeah, I think it was my favorite book. Like, it's definitely in the running for my favorite book this year. It's one that just like stays with you, and I could not get out of my head. The last book I read in quarter 3 was Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. This was my first time ever reading Frankenstein. I only know Frankenstein through just like pop culture. I've never seen any of the movies, which actually that's not true. If you check out my TikTok, I did a TikTok of me watching the 1931 version of Frankenstein, which was wild. So I went into this pretty blind, just knowing the basics that like a scientist creates a monster. So I did end up giving this 3 stars. The way I summed this up in my like review on Goodreads was The Consequences of My Own Actions, the novel. Because my goodness, Victor Frankenstein, the entire book just like keeps making ridiculous choices and then like reaping the consequences of those choices over and over and over again. And I was like, my dude, what are we doing here? This also wasn't scary at all to me. I know this is supposed to be a classic horror, but I didn't find it scary. I found it more sad. I didn't expect to feel bad for the monster, but I did, because very much like Victor creates him and then like runs away and regrets it immediately. And Frankenstein's like, hey dad, like, hey creator, like, why don't you love me? Why doesn't anyone love me? And why can I not live in society as a person? And it's just so funny to me, because like Victor, why did you make this man 8 foot tall? You didn't have to do that. Why did you give him like huge muscles and like legs so he can like run across icebergs and like accidentally kill someone with his bare hands? Like you did that. You made those decisions, and yet he's like, I need to rid the world of this demon. And it's just like, so spoilers for Frankenstein. But also at one point, Frankenstein, also in the book, Frankenstein fully learns how to like talk and read and like is intellectual. And Victor takes that as him being manipulative. And I don't agree with that take. But at one point, Frankenstein's like, hey, I don't want to be alone anymore. Like, make me a wife. Thanks. And Victor's like, I guess. And then at the last minute is like, but what if they procreate and like then spread more demons across the world? I can't do that to the world. And I was like, my guy, you're literally building her, like, take out her reproductive organs. What do you mean? Like, you can make it to where she can't have children. But he ends up not doing that, which I was surprised by, because I know that there's a movie called The Bride of Frankenstein, but apparently it's very different than where the plot goes in this book. And then just like literally just everything that happens to Victor, I just was like not surprised at. And I was like, yeah, my guy, like, of course this happened. Like, what are we talking about here? And it was just like, I guess the moral of the story is that the monster is not the monster. Victor Frankenstein is the monster. And I was like, I mean, I guess, but he was just more like annoying than like mad scientist, if that makes sense. But I don't regret reading it. I'm happy to like have more knowledge of a classic And it's been fun going on a movie journey with how Frankenstein has like changed throughout pop culture. It's been fun being more in the know. I'm excited to watch Bride of Frankenstein and then Young Frankenstein and then Guillermo del Toro's new Netflix movie I'm very much looking forward to. So that's everything I read from July to September of 2025. If you've read any of these books, let me know how you liked them or if my ratings were crazy. And if you have any book recommendations for what I should read for the rest of the year, let me know. Don't forget to subscribe, like, comment, follow my TikTok and Instagram. Bookstagram, it's hard out here, fam. I don't understand it at all. So, yeah. Anyways, I will talk to y'all later. Bye.